It's going to be interesting times as we get into the future. We're going to continue with another conversation this hour when we look at then the IEBC, the job that it's been given to do, and what it all means. Joining us this hour is we've had a conversation with him on many times before, but James Oswago is a former IEBC CEO, and he's here with us this morning. Major Oswago, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Cold but fine.
You're cold but fine. Evie sometimes can do some magic. We'll see what she can do about that. Yeah. Thank you for being here this morning, for joining us. It's been a busy couple of months. With the formation of the IEBC, we had conversations with you before, and then we saw the formation of the IEBC, and now we've seen that they've been put to the test in terms of them coming together. So those are some of the conversations that we have as we get into it now. But before we do, I want to welcome you with today's proverb. We know how much you love that.
Give me an easy one.
Well, I'll try. This week, we've gone into a different African country every day. Today, by no special design, we finish those proverbs in Nigeria. And the southeastern people of Nigeria are known as the Igbo. And this is the proverb that we share this morning. You don't start looking for a black goat at night. You don't start looking for a black goat at night. How would you interpret that?
Number one, black goats are associated with bad spirits.
Are they? Okay.
Two, darkness itself is something that Africans want to run away from. So in my view, you don't look for a black goat at night. I mean, there are certain things that you don't do.
Yeah. Look for it during the day.
Yes.
Okay.
No, don't
look for it at all.
There are certain things you don't do.
Okay. All right. I think it's wonderful how we can all have different interpretations of different things. So you sat in the position of CEO of the IEBC in a previous time. And now we see the IEBC in its most recent constitution. And when I say constitution, not a document that it's led by, but constitution in terms of its makeup, then having to deliver in a very short time after that constitution. And already the indictments are rolling in hot. From what we see prior to the by-election and also what we saw yesterday, let's give an overall bill of health from where you sit, first of all, before we get into the details on the conduct of the IEBC and if it's been able to do what it's mandated to do so far.
Thank you. If you ask me to give an IEBC a score, between 1 and 10, where 10 is the best and 1 is the worst, I would give IEBC 4.
4? Okay.
That is dismal.
It is.
Because the lowest you expect from an electoral management body must not be below 7. But that is because if we factor in the job that the IEBC is supposed to do, the job of IEBC is found in, if you look at the Constitution, Chapter 38 talks about the political rights and defines what those political rights are.
Yeah.
Then Article 1 talks about the principles of electoral management, or principles of elections. And it's those principles that say what kind of election we have. One of those principles is that the election that is conducted must be free and fair, secret ballot, transparent, and must be free from violence, improper manipulation, and corruption. And also, the last requirement is that an election must be conducted in a manner that is transparent, that is effective, and all those things. If you use that criteria, then IEBC has conducted itself in a very unedifying manner. But we are being unfair to IEBC.
How so?
Because there is an organization called International IDEA. International IDEA is like the Harvard of elections. And in one of their stipulations, after a lot of research, it says that for an individual to be able to have the competence to run an election as a commissioner, you must have been exposed to election for a minimum of 2 years. The commissioners who are running in this election have been there for 4 months. Before that, IEBC had stayed for, I think, 2 years or so without a commission. And before that also, IEBC had stayed for about 3 years. Before the election in 2022, IEBC also did not have a fully constituted commission. Cumulatively then, in the last 6-7 years, IEBC has had a commission for maybe only under 1 year. So in the period, either they didn't have a commission, or they only had a commission for the 4 months before they ran this election. So how do you expect a body like that to have the capacity and the competence to run the kind of election that is envisaged in Article 81 of the Constitution?
So you opine that from a best standard of practice, we do not meet the prerequisite of a fully fledged, functional electoral commission as a country. Is that the position when you look at now the performance? Because as you say, the international idea indicates at least 2 years of exposure and a few others to help you streamline, generate, and at least offer proper guidance, in a manner of speaking, on how to do the electoral management of the country where we are domiciled. When you compare those internationally best recognized standards in terms of the prerequisite requirements for the commission, doesn't have to be the commissioner themselves, would you say that then we are not fully in sync with the best standards of practice? And perhaps that's why we are always having to pick up the pieces after an election.
No. What I'm saying is, structurally, you may have conformed with that. And you've created this body called IEBC. All right. You've gone through the process. By the way, one of those principles that are listed in Article 81 is that it must be done by an independent organization. So we presume that IEBC is constitutionally independent.
Well.
So the question is IEBC itself, is this the, you are running, let me use the football metaphor.
Right.
You're preparing Harambee Stars, and you want Harambee Stars to go to next year's World Cup. And Harambee Stars, you call them 2 weeks before they meet Nigeria or qualifications, or before they meet Ghana, and you call them at our stadium. Then they're defeated. And you are saying Harambee Stars underperformed.
But did the Harambee Stars know that they were going to play? Did they know a year in advance?
Harambee Stars were not there because it is the government that constitutes Harambee Stars. So the question is, did the KFF know?
Exactly. Did the organizing body know that they were supposed to be?
KFF
they knew
all along.
So they should have made the preparations before that.
They should have made the preparation. So IEBC, as we speak today, as commissioners, those commissioners, this is the first time that those commissioners were coming in contact with an election. The ones who are running this election today. Because they have never run an election.
One of the commissioners is a former registrar of political parties, has an idea about some of these things, no? Does that matter?
He has. She has. But Anderitu, who I know very well, was previously the director of political party. That is not a commission of IEBC.
It's not.
It's a different issue.
Sure.
You are running political parties.
Part of a process, however, that would have an idea.
Very different. Very different. If you are in Anderitu's previous position, you will never be seen in a polling station.
However, our legislative body, the parliament, vetted.
Yes.
And they gifted us, Kenyans.
Yes.
What they deemed to be the best of the candidates. And then rightly, as you put it, because the proof is in the pudding. The kind of malpractice we see, inefficiency, incompetency, lack of regulations, lack of implementation of whatever mandate IEBC is supposed to be, is just at another level. But the legislative body approved these people. They knew they had not been exposed to an election 2 years prior to that process, as is expected. So then where do we as Kenyans seek refuge in terms of trying to have a functional and independent IEBC? Because we are building up to another election. They are not going to have another exposure. I mean, unless like in some, we just might have a by-election in Isiolo, courtesy of the late MP. But by and large, they are not going to have a major electoral exposure. So where does that leave us as a country?
It leaves us in a very bad place. And it leaves us hoping that between now and the next by-election, between now and the next general election, IEBC would have gotten its act together. The commissioners would have matured, the commissioners would have learned from the current exposure. And from this current exposure, they would have been fully prepared to run the 2027 general election. But still, given that 2027 general election, you don't prepare for the 2027 election now. You start preparing for the next election after the conclusion of the previous one, which means the preparation for the 2027 election started in 2023 or 2022 with something that is called post-election evaluation. After every election, you do a post-election evaluation. Post-election evaluation is done by the entity that has run the election, but normally, in order to get a good job, you call people from outside, and they help you look at and evaluate and assess the previous election. Now, you can come and say, this is how the 2022 election was conducted, these are the changes we want to make, these are the improvements we want to make. So that result forms the initial template for the election that you want to run in 2027.
Right.
Now, you brought these people now, you expect them to start from that angle, within 1 year and something else, run a general election. A by-election is not a preparation for the next general election. Because a by-election, both in terms of scale and in terms of technical sophistication, is not the same as a general election. Here, we are running election in a few constituencies. I think there's 6 or 17 in terms of scale and everything else. Politically, a by-election is a referendum on the government in situ. All right. But as far as the technical requirement of IEBC, a by-election is something that this is such an ordinary thing. This is such a day-to-day thing that is a routine thing. All right? That you shouldn't say that this one prepares us for the general, because a general election and by-election are totally different things in order of scale in everything else. So the question is, do we feel confident now that within this period we can prepare the IEBC in order to run the next election? Question number one. Question number two is, the IEBC works in an ecosystem. There are so many other institutions and so many other bodies that must work in sync with IEBC in order to deliver the quality of the election that you are looking for. It means, therefore, that if you want the election that is free, fair, and accountable, which reflects the will of the people, you will focus on IEBC 1, but you must also have an equal focus on other bodies that work with IEBC to deliver the election that you want.
Such as whom?
Such as, for example, take the political violence. Take the kind of speeches that we had en route to this election. All right? You would have expected this cohesion body to have teeth such that if you make the certain utterances, that other commission body would take action. But we know that they will call a press conference, they'll condemn you, and everybody knows they don't have the bite. Which means politicians have impunity. You know, you can say whatever you want, right? Number two, take the violence that you witnessed in our election, in this election.
Yes.
IEBC in Kasipul find certain two I think participants, candidates, $1 million shillings. What you are expecting is, you expect next time, in order as preparation, IEBC would disqualify somebody. And whether IEBC can disqualify a candidate who they themselves had authorized, in my view, they can and they should, to send the lesson that we can do it in order to create the kind of election that we want.
Have we ever seen that done, Bo? Because Major Oswago, that's what would convince people, because we're saying that we need to then essentially corral IEBC to do certain things that would then give a position of confidence into the next election or any kind of process, whether it is the, restructuring of boundaries, if that needed to happen, any process that the IEBC then is mandated to carry out. There are certain things that if they did, it would then secure confidence in the people. That when we saw the things that we have seen, whether there is an allegation that a particular aspirant is involved in some kind of bribery, and we get reports that the EACC said, this person, we're not going to really clear this person because of 1, 2, 3. The IEBC should have been bold enough to say, well, because of 1, 2, 3, pursuant to, or waiting for investigations into, we cannot accept this person's candidature for this position. Should we have seen something like that to foster some kind of confidence? Should we have seen more than a slap on the wrist of $1 million shillings of a penalty when we see that goons from particular sides that are involving themselves in certain kinds of destruction? Should we have seen that when you see state officials operating and performing in campaigns, when we know very well what the law says about what you can or cannot do as a state official when it comes, should we not have seen IEBC pronouncing itself unequivocally in some of these to say, okay, actually, yeah, these guys seem to have things in the right direction, but we didn't see that? Would it not have fostered some kind of confidence if we did? And what would have barred IEBC from doing that in the first place?
Because the IEBC that you have in place, the IEBC, there is a saying, you don't send a boy to do a man's job. The IEBC that you have today, does not build the confidence, has not built the professional capacity. Commissioners themselves, those decisions we are talking about are made by commissioners. Those commissioners have not run sufficient election to get the self-confidence you are talking about.
But right and wrong, and we're just saying this is the way, this is not the way. Certain things to be done according to the law. It's clear. You don't even have to think. The law is stated what you cannot do. That doesn't require you to be in a position for a long period of time to be able to say, hang on a minute, this is what the law says. This is what the law says you cannot do. And we pronounce ourselves on that. James, do you really think that somebody needed to have been in office for more than 5 months to be able to stand up and say, absolutely not? The law says we cannot, we will not.
Let me explain to you something. Let's take a constituency like Kasipul. In every constituency, there is an IEBC manager resident there. They used to be called constituency election coordinators. Now they are called assistant manager or some other fancy title. These are relatively senior person. They live in the constituency. They work in the constituency. They know the constituency. So when a by-election is due in that constituency, they don't need to be told by anybody else about the level of violence, about the political. They know what goes on in the constituency. And they are able themselves, because they also sit in the structures of security at that level. They are able themselves to tell you that this is the level of insecurity we're going to expect. But you expect, once they have done that themselves, the security organization to respond. So what you expect is, at some point, IEBC should be able to call a candidate in private and tell him, this is what we are saying. This is the facts that we have. And if you exceed, this is what we'll do. All right? Given the evidence from the lowest level possible. All right. Now, with that, then, the IEBC would be able to say, we are disqualifying you.
Why is
but
it?
What I'm saying, the point I'm saying is, if we want IEBC to do a world-class job, we must also enable IEBC not only to be fully constituted. Remember, I told you that Article 81 provides that the election that is free and fair, one of the principles, it must be run by an independent body.
Correct.
And you don't get your independence from because you have taken an oath. Your independence starts from the recruitment process. So our interest in IEBC now should have started, is this a truly independent body, the way they were constituted? Number one. Now, if you are happy with the way they were recruited, then it's okay. That's what you will expect. But IEBC does not recruit itself.
Correct.
Okay. There is somebody whose responsibility is to recruit IEBC. Like when IEBC has, for example, 4 years without commissioners, what do you expect IEBC to do? There is somebody else. What I'm trying to say is, we don't have commitment to democracy. We are going through democracy as some form of pageantry, as some form of process. But we don't have that commitment to the idea and the practice of democracy. We are doing democracy and election as a calendar event.
Now, let's take
and because we take it as a calendar event,
right,
this is something that is scheduled. So we say, okay, 2027, let's do an election. Even today, as we're going to that election, you've heard Okiya Mtata saying he's going to court seeking a declaration.
Yes.
Jason Muturi going to court seeking a declaration. The thing they are seeking declaration on is whether the results at a polling station is final.
But it has been said it is, Oswago.
It is.
Number one, that has been said for a million times.
Yes.
Right.
But is that the most critical thing in IEBC today? Today, as we speak, there is violence in election.
Yes.
Today, as we speak, there is bribery. In any political dispensation where the outcome of an election is predicated, can be predicted based on the resources you can mobilize, you expect the kinds of things we are seeing. So the biggest challenge to our election today, and the biggest challenge that must be fought by IEBC and everybody else, is the prevalence of money in politics. You saw open bribery. I don't know, maybe you did.
We did.
Where blankets are given, I think like that. Anywhere where money is the motivating, is the moving factor in running an election, everywhere you expect polarization, you expect extremism, you expect impunity.
Allow me to take you back just a bit to the...
Our people who are supposed to be putting the level playing ground,
yes,
so that we get the election they get distracted by issues like what we just mentioned. And they lift their eyes from the matters that are critical, the matters that can inform the election that we want. Today, I repeat myself, the biggest challenge facing Kenyan democracy as we speak today, and it will be there in 2027, is money in politics.
Okay. So, tantamount to buying of votes.
Yes.
Because you saw people from the issues that should be focusing on and the voice of the candidates that are vying for positions.
And IEBC can do something about it because you have political parties campaign finance bill. But it is the role of members of parliament. You expect somebody like, I'm sorry to mention names, like Okia Mtata, instead of going to court, I would expect him to mount a comprehensive legislation to do with
financing of the campaign.
Election finance campaign, election finance monitoring, election finance enforcement. To put the rigorous process of knowing how much money you've spent, how much, and if it is found that you've spent more than you've declared, then something happens.
To disqualify. Allow me to take you back just a bit to the constitution of the IEBC, because it was such a thorny issue, you'd recall. Some political parties felt that they are not being represented. In terms of standard and best practice, if we are to borrow from what we're saying, the international idea and other quarters, what would be the ideal way in terms of process and procedure of getting our commissioners?
Somebody called Professor Stephen Levitsky wrote a book. This is a professor from Harvard University. And I'm sure you've read the book or you'll familiarize yourself.
Yes.
It's called How Democracies Die. Everybody in the US these days have read the book. What the theme in that book is that democracy is not killed by coups and what have you. Democracy is killed by people who first are democratically elected, number one. When they get to power, they use the means that are set by democracy to kill democracy. Right? That means this. We had a constitution. The constitution says IEBC must be independent.
Correct.
And the law that I've told you, Article 81, says to run an election that is free and fair, you need an independent electoral management body.
Yes.
So we are saying IEBC is independent according to the constitutional stipulation. But you are asking me, is it independent? Now, what is the mechanism put in place to select commissioners to IEBC? The mechanism that is put in place as of the ones which are running the election now
Yes.
is manipulable by the powers that by the state. All right. So you end up people who are put in place going through the form and the process that prescribed by the law. But when they get in office, okay, the same individual, because then the recruitment process is neither here nor there.
Correct.
You end up with this. All right? The law that they use, or anybody else that will use to kill democracy in Kenya, these are not new laws. For example, the law provides that Article 38, political political rights. You must have freedom of expression. But then you go and make a speech, and goons are sent. You make a speech, and people are arrested. The law says there should be no bribery. I've just read that.
Yes, you have.
But you see people being bribed in open daylight. IEBC doesn't have a policeman. So the question is, we say we want democracy. But what we are interested in is the pageantry. What we are interested in is the form.
Just ticking the box.
Those are just calendar events that we must do. But we are not really invested in having the real democracy that we are talking about. If we were interested in that, you would not have people distributing blankets in open daylight and without sanction. But we are saying IEBC should have done something. We are not saying which is that political party which did that. Why do you have blankets marked GOK being distributed? It's not Kazia IEBC.
Good question.
Why do you go to a polling station with goons and they're not arrested?
Okay. Another critical issue that as
and
Kenyans,
during the entire campaign process. So if we want,
yes,
and the point should be, and you in the media, you have even a bigger role than IEBC. To shine this torchlight, not on the weaknesses of IEBC in these technical matters, but to look at the macro level and tell the Kenyan people, if you don't want election, don't do them.
And if you want them, do
if
them
you
right.
want them, do them right. But if you want this kind of election where there is violence, there is bribery, it's okay, do it. Unfortunately, if you keep on running election the way we are doing now, and you do it repeatedly, what happens is people become disillusioned. People lose that belief in democracy. People lose belief in that voting. You are laying the seeds for anarchy.
Now, our boundaries have not been reviewed.
Yes.
Another core function of the IEBC.
Yes.
The only issue, because Kenyans are contending, that was constitutionally stipulated that we shall have a boundary review process.
Yes.
But as you say, the crisis in the formation of the constitution of the commission has left us here. In terms of law, what should be the position in terms of a boundary review? Because again, we are too close to the election. It may not be practical to implement that. But in terms of law, because I like what you're saying, we should have a macro approach and try to have an ideal on how we want to manage our electoral process, then cascade it to our to our homegrown solutions. But in terms of boundary review, what's your take on that?
Article 89 of the Constitution deals with the boundary delimitation. And it says you must do election. You must do, first of all, you do a census. And after you've done the census, and the census is done between 8 and 12 years.
Yes.
So boundary delimitation must also be done within a similar period. The Constitution provides what Article 89 provides, not only that when the time frame to do the boundary delimitation, but it also gives you instruction on the factors to consider when doing that boundary delimitation. Those factors are so critical that if you don't do them, then it is like we've not done the boundary delimitation. And there was a judgment recently called the BBI judgment, which you read about.
Yes.
At the High Court, and the decision and the pronouncement in the High Court was adopted at the Court of Appeal also. They said that there are certain things which you must do in boundary delimitation, which if you don't do, it is like you've not done a boundary delimitation. That is the BBI Act. All right? What is the importance of that? It means that not only must you do boundary delimitation within a certain period, but you must also conform to the stipulation within that particular law. So can we do boundary delimitation? First of all, we are out of time.
Yes.
Secondly, the Constitution talks of something called population density, population quota.
Yes.
The population quota, you divide the number of constituencies in the country by the number of the population. Once you've done that, then you say that is the population, maybe 150 so.
Yes.
It means that the Constitution provides all these constituencies should be as far as possible have the same number of voters.
On aggregate, yes.
On aggregate. You do that to avoid something called gerrymandering. Now, gerrymandering is an American thing, but it is also here and everywhere else. You want to avoid that. So that all constituencies are more or less of the same size. As we are speaking today, regarding the last census, the census for Northeastern Province was dismissed by the High Court. In other words, the census that we have, which can be used for a basis for knowing the population quota, is not there.
It's incomplete, so we cannot work.
It's not there. So how will you do boundary delimitation? Number one, let's start from there.
Right.
How do you do boundary delimitation? It is not IEBC. See? Forget the issue that I told you, that in order to do boundary, there are things that you must look
Yes.
at religiously. And the BBI Act has already said that this is how to go around it. But now there is this issue that you need to have one of those things that you need to have is population quota.
Yes.
Because that is why you're doing the duplication.
It's about the people.
Yes.
The census then should happen as a basis.
Yes, because the last time it was done, there were about 26 constituencies which were protected
Yes.
because they were falling below that standard.
Yes.
But that was a temporary measure. In the next dispensation, either you will retain that or you
collapse.
now revise them, absorb them, or whatever you do. Now that cannot be done. In my view, IEBC, the one we have today, does not have the time to do the boundary delimitation by 2027. The last time boundary delimitation was done in Kenya was, I think, 2012.
Yes.
The one which was concluded 2012. There was a commission that was formed. And that commission took about 2-3 years to start and finish its work. You need to do that. But there's another problem also.
Right.
The Kriegler Commission provided that boundary delimitation and running election should be done by different bodies. That is what the Kriegler Commission said.
Okay.
Our constitution ignored that.
Yes.
So that we have now fused together boundary delimitation
And the electoral process.
and electoral process in one organization. Now, if you had listened to Kriegler, we would be having now another commission doing boundary delimitation, and they would be ready, by the way, because it would be different from
And it
IEBC.
would have happened at a different time,
Yes.
different people. Okay.
But now we put them together. So today we have one body that is running both boundary delimitation and also running elections. Now you see, number one, does IEBC as currently constituted, do they have the capacity to do boundary delimitation? Forget about all those things that you mentioned.
Right.
Do they have the technical capacity? Boundary delimitation does not mean having a map and a pencil, then you just sit and... That is gerrymandering. In order to do it properly, you need experts. IEBC today has got about 9 directorates. 9 or 7, I may be wrong, but 9 or 8
There is
directorates.
about, yes.
There is no directorate called boundary delimitation. There is a department that is called boundary delimitation, which at the last time I checked was domiciled in the Department of Audit or something. All right.
Okay.
The name of the organization is Elections and Boundaries Commission. That presumes that elections and boundaries are co-equal.
So there should be
But
function.
here we have that organization that is now. The part that is supposed to be co-equal is not even a directorate. It's a mere department within a directorate. So how do you expect them to have the technical capacity to do the boundary delimitation like the one that we are inheriting, the one that was done last 2012?
Okay.
So it's difficult. even from-
Do you blame IEBC for that?
Well, I think
Partly.
there's a collective blame here, Jake,
Good.
because if I'm in a position, there's the common adage that we hear that you can't expect to blame a fish on its ability to climb a tree. It's not made for that. The way the IEBC is currently constituted, there's certain things it cannot do, and that is clear. But whereas it's necessary for us to look at certain things it cannot do, for limitations of funding, for limitations of human resource, or for limitations of having not, charted the thing properly. But those are certain things that they cannot do because they don't have those provisions. But there are certain things which they are mandated to do that don't require resources that we still see it looks like an issue.
Give me an example.
So I mean, for goodness sake, the EACC was very clear that they had an issue with one of the aspirants that was then given essentially a green light by the IEBC to participate in these elections. That's just one example. The calling out of the violence that we saw, it doesn't matter who the violence was meted out on, that in this process, the referee of this process is the IEBC, and there were flagrant mishaps. But we didn't hear anything. If anything, we saw that there was a prancing about, and they were doing spot checks, and they were saying, yes, everything is going on well. That other people had to open their mouths and say, there's a problem here. And IEBC has been mum. That you get a slap on the wrist of a million shillings when we know very well that you know who was involved in the violence. But what we're told is that everything is going all right. You don't need resources to do what the law says. You don't need a directorate as opposed to a department to do what the law says. It cannot be a suggestion to obey what the law says. And that is where we see, James, that then the deficit of trust continues to grow, because anything that goes wrong, we'll say, you see, it was the IEBC. That happens. It happens all the time. So if you had that, and it doesn't really matter, the outcome of this, whether it is the people who won or didn't win today, or it would have been a different outcome tomorrow, these things still run through. That we don't see the robustness that would be demanded of a commission like the IEBC. And the question is that, and because you don't see that, people will, nature abhors a vacuum, James. So if you don't see that, what you immediately say, we've even seen the words today, there's compromise. Somebody's in the pockets of another person. We won't see that outright refusal of certain things or demand of certain things because somebody's on the take. That's what we hear. That's what we see. That's what we assume. And you don't need resources to follow the law.
And I don't want to be taken as the defender of IEBC. But I want to tell you, having been in IEBC, and I've run more elections than anybody else in this country. I can brag about that. General election and all, I have done.
Yes.
And this way I've come to the conclusion, though, that we ourselves as a country, what we want is a weakened, what we want is a dysfunctional IEBC. We want something we can manipulate. And when I say we, you are talking both in government and those in opposition. Because by now, what you should be hearing, people who, because you are in the alternative government, what you should be hearing people talking about today is joint people and not the government moving legislation saying campaign finance.
Yes.
Rigorous, comprehensive overhaul of the campaign finance legislation. That is what you are expecting. You expect somebody to say that this is what we want in the next election. Comprehensive. But what we are having now is we want a declaration of the court that when results are announced at a polling station, they are final. The court already did that. Adequate, and it's a small thing. But you are not looking at the macro environment. You are leaving it intact to underperform. You are leaving it intact to be dysfunctional. All right? It is us, the entire political class. Why do you think they have not come up with a suggestion to, for instance, to bring up a much more rigorous Political Parties Act? All right? The one that regulates, you recall that the nomination process for these political parties.
Yes.
They say this is our nomination process, and they don't, and then they violate it.
They say it's an internal mechanism.
So you need a much more rigorous agreement so that the IEBC can police it, the IEBC can look at that.
And it helps.
That is not there.
It helps to question even those internal mechanisms, because even the aforementioned candidate who was cleared by IEBC, EACC had flagged them, but then there is a party that cleared them for nomination. So,
And let me comment on that.
right.
She's right. She's saying ESCC says the way we see you, we're disqualifying you from running the election. IEBC says there's something called presumption of innocence. IEBC didn't create that. We have to be balanced.
Yes.
IEBC says there is something called presumption of innocence. And presumption of innocence says you are innocent until your cause has been adjudicated by the highest court in the land. So the magistrate court, for example, convicts you, and you are in the appeal process. IEBC, in their own interpretation, saying, no. Because there are other processes, there are other places where you can you can seek redress.
Yes.
So we will not deny you this constitutional opportunity. That is okay. The only thing that is required then is consistency on IEBC to fully not only in that, but in all the other things. For example, and she has mentioned it, you cause violence like happened in Homa Bay.
Yes.
In Kasipol. Instead of giving you 1 million shillings, they say you are disqualified.
I mean,
Yeah. That's what, so you expect that from IEBC. Now, so to the extent that IEBC says ESCC is giving us, the law allows you, the presumption of innocence allows you to prosecute your appeal to the highest court. And IEBC is arguing, no, for that case, go ahead, because this is within the law. The same IEBC that says that, and agree with them on that particular score, should also be equally rigorous and say, you committed violence in this campaign, you are disqualified.
Okay.
Even if it means all of you. Now, that is an earth-shaking thing, and then you leave it to the courts.
Yes.
Let the courts pronounce themselves that they agree, people can just fight.
Or not.
Yeah.
And then we'd have deterrent. So I think I do agree with you that we need to have actionable solutions coming from all these dissent, all
And
these
even on
complaints.
that,
Yes.
you still expect the same people in parliament today
Yeah.
to bring legislation that clarifies that.
Now, in the interest of time, this is a matter that cannot have enough time to discuss.
Sure.
Because it touches to the core of our democracy and how we manage our processes and governance, because the people we end up in office with are born out of this electoral process. But looking at it from where we stand today, devoid of the state capture and the incompetence of the legislature or the National Assembly, can we relax and say that we have enough regulations in terms of managing an electoral process? It is only that we are not honoring the laws that we have provided to ourselves. Do we have enough regulations, enough laws, that the only thing that is lacking is the goodwill, both political and civic, to honor them?
That's why I referred you to the book by Professor Stephen Levitsky.
How democracy.
It's called How Democracies Die,
Yeah.
Right.
because it tells you that democracies are not killed by autocrats or by coups. Okay, that's one way.
Yeah.
But the greatest threat, what is called democracy, regression, the whole world, or the greatest threat to democracy in the whole world are, one, people who themselves are elected through a democratic process. They get to government. Once they're in government, they use the institution and the laws they find there to kill democracy.
To kill democracy.
All right. So the people, the question you're asking,
Yes.
as we elected people to parliament today, the people in parliament, as we're speaking to now, are focusing not on the things that will, one, create a level playing field, not on the thing that will empower the IEBC, but tinkering on the sides. All right? Leaving the electoral environment or ecosystem as it is today, and I will tell you, as it is today guarantees you the same result 2027.
2027. A lot to be interrogated. I mean, just like Joe said. And James, thank you for being here this morning. It opens our eyes to the realities of things that we must demand for, like you had said earlier. And that conversation never stops. James Oswago, former IEBC CEO, has been here with us this morning. Thank you for joining us.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.